Of all the attempts made on the world water speed record, over half have ended in fatal tragedy. Why?
Because you're traveling at insane speeds on a surface that's changing all the time. Yet despite the risks, water is home to some of the biggest, most powerful speed machines of all time. And some of the smallest. So how do these deadly machines achieve massive speed?
Just clocking 100 miles an hour.
And how can you control them on this ever-changing surface? Speed on water is all about power and drag. How much power you can cram into your boat, and how much drag the boat experiences as it tries to plow through the water.
If you're mad enough to want to go seriously fast on water, then you need to maximize the power and minimize the drag. And that's exactly what the early racers did with boats like Jazz.
Built in 1912, Jazz was one of the very first racing powerboats, competing in races held all over Europe. And she was a two-seater, as one of the racing rules stated, "A crew of 2 or 1 and 10 stone of ballast will be carried in all races, so that those owners who prefer to employ a mechanic to run the engine may not be placed at a disadvantage."
And I am that mechanic! And what a beautiful engine! A 4-cylinder, 4.5-litre Vauxhall racing engine, knocking out about 60 horsepower, an enormous amount for the time, giving you maximum power for minimum weight, which meant speed! But power alone won't give a boat maximum speed. There comes a point where no matter how powerful and light your engine is, you won't go any faster.
You've also got to look at drag, caused by the water as the boat tries to power through it.
Early powerboats like Jazz had a brilliantly clever approach to drag. Instead of trying to plow through the water like we are, they simply rode on top of it.
Using an ingenious device called the stepped hull, patented by William Henry Fauber in 1908. The stepped hull worked by doing two things at once.
Above the water, it looks like a simple long hull with plenty of room to cram your engines into. But underwater, it's a completely different story, as I will now demonstrate with my rather natty underwater camera. Here we go. Now, as you can see, there, about halfway along the bottom of the hull, is a rather large step. This actually makes the hull operate as if it's much shorter, skimming across the surface with only a small amount of the hull in contact with the water. The result, less drag, more speed.
But to see exactly how it works, I've got to get her moving.
John's acting as my mechanic now, and we're just going to sort of try and blast around the sort of oval course that Jazz would have raced around nearly 100 years ago. There's plenty of driver input, pressurizing the fuel, keeping an eye on the oil pressure, making sure there's no water in the bottom of the thing. Absolutely brilliant.
The stepped hull's working brilliantly. As we accelerate, a wave is forming under the bow of the boat. As we go faster and faster, the front of the boat rises up out of the water, and the wave moves backwards under the boat until it gets trapped under the step, lifting most of the hull out of the water, reducing drag.
Genius and fast.
For all of the 1920s and most of the 1930s, the world water speed record was held by stepped-hulled boats like this, the most famous of all being Gar Wood's Miss America 10, powered not by one engine, but four of them. Four 36-litre, 1,600 horsepower aircraft engines, making it more powerful than a freight locomotive.
And with the exposed petrol engine in front of you, just for a fleeting moment you can kind of feel what it must have been like to be Garwood in the magical age of the powerboat. Fabulous.
In 1932, Garwood claimed the world water speed record, driving Miss America 10 flat out up the Sinclair River in America, reaching 124.8 miles an hour. You couldn't go much faster with a stepped hull.
But on the 4th of August 1939, the world water speed record was completely and absolutely smashed by a tiny blue boat with a third of the power, employing a completely new design.
Her name was Bluebird K4, and she was driven by Englishman Sir Malcolm Campbell. Bluebird K4 was what is known as a three-point hydroplane, an utterly revolutionary concept with bizarre origins. In 1936, the Chinese government hired the American boatyard Ventnor's to build them a fleet of suicide attack boats. They were at war with Japan and wanted a single-seater high-speed machine that could carry a big bomb in the bow. Initially, Ventnor's found this particularly tricky to do, as the weight of the bomb made the boat nosedive. But they came up with an ingenious solution, driven by the fact that Ventnor's weren't just makers of boats. They were also specialist manufacturers of water skis. Adolf and Arno Apel, the father and son engineering team at Ventnor's, simply strapped a pair of water skis under the bow of the suicide boat with incredible effect.
As the boat accelerated, it rode up onto the water skis, with all the boat except the propeller out of the water. With no hull at all in the water, there was scarcely any drag. As a consequence, the boat went like stink.
Adolf and Arno perfected the design, replacing the water skis with floats, known as sponsons, and the three-point hydroplane was born. So called because it only touched the water at just 3 points, the tips of the sponsons and the propeller.
As soon as Sir Malcolm Campbell got wind of the Chinese suicide boats, he had his own three-point hydroplane built, Bluebird K4.
On her first run in 1939, this almost drag-free boat smashed the world record with a speed of 141.74 miles an hour, pioneering the shape of all water speed record holders to this very day. This is a perfect full-sized replica. She's a stunningly streamlined piece of 1930s speed technology. And underneath, you can see just how much of the hull doesn't touch the water. At speed, this whole central area here is filled with air, with only that point there, that point, and of course the propeller touching the water. And that, in a nutshell, is the secret behind these craft. Three-pointers don't ride on water, they ride on air. And under here was an aircraft engine, a massive 36-litre V12 Rolls-Royce R-Type, knocking out 2,600 horsepower. Yes. It's the prototype of the engine that was used in Spitfires during World War II. This is a low-flying plane capable of 150 miles an hour with no brakes and only one seat. So, much as I'd love to, if I tried to drive a three-point hydroplane like this on my own, I'd probably kill myself. Shame there isn't such a thing as a three-point hydroplane school. A summer's morning in the fens of eastern England, a scene of perfect tranquility, broken only by the sound of birds calling, distant church bells ringing, and 25 racing powerboat engines being fired up. Welcome to 3-Point Hydroplane Racing School. This is my machine, 10 feet long, 400cc race-tuned outboard motor, and a little stick poking out the bottom. Why the little stick? Because hydroplanes are designed to scarcely touch the water, which is great for speed, but a nightmare for cornering. If you've got no contact with the water and try and turn, you'll just keep on going in a straight line like a car on ice. But at least with the stick, the hydroplane has something to grip the water with. And you can go around bends as well, but only on the same side as the stick. In the right hands, this tiny training boat will do 70 miles an hour. But what will it do in mine? Right, here we go.
First most important thing in the boat, the throttle on the left-hand side.
Right, there it is.
The throttle on and off. More power, less power, more speed.
Okay.
No gears, no clutch, no nothing. Squeeze and go. You don't turn right. When you're turning, the boat will turn and slide sideways.
Okay.
You're moving your hand from this position
Right.
round to here
Yeah.
for a full turn.
Yeah.
The fin will actually stop the boat sliding sideways. As soon as you're round the turn, pull the wheel back straight and off you go.
Right, I think I'm ready to give it a go. There are 12 hydroplanes in this 6-lap race, some of them much bigger than mine, and all of them much more experienced. So, it's a handicapped race with the fastest starting last, and trying to catch the others up by the end. As I've got by far the least experience, I'll be starting first, when the hand reaches the 12. And to be honest, I'm more than a bit nervous. I'm powering along with my face just centimeters above the water. But as I come round the back straight, into the setting sun, I'm not happy. I can't see where I'm going. Start ploughing straight at the bank and cut the power off. So I'm afraid for me, the race is over, leaving the field to roar on without me. Suddenly there's a crash, making me relieved I stopped when I did. Thankfully, the driver's okay, and out again in the next race. Gutsy lass. But for me, those low-drag 3-point hydroplanes are utterly terrifying. Imagine what they'd be like if they had unlimited power. That's exactly what happened to powerboating at the end of World War II, when a totally new type of engine with massive power became available: the jet. Much simpler than a traditional piston engine, and therefore much lighter. It was also infinitely more powerful. Fitting a jet to a 3-point hydroplane that was already madly fast was always going to give you an insanely quick boat. And that's exactly what Sir Malcolm Campbell's son, Donald, did. In 1955, Donald followed in his father's footsteps, launching another Bluebird, this one numbered K7. A 3-point hydroplane powered by a 7,500 horsepower jet engine. Bluebird K7 looked very different from classic 3-point hydroplanes, but it worked on the same principle. When flat out, it rose completely out of the water and rode on 3 tiny points. 1, 2, 3. This is a perfect replica right down to the jet engine. On the 27th of July 1955, Donald and Bluebird K7 smashed through the 200-mile-an-hour barrier, the first ever to do so on water, setting the new water speed record at 202.32 miles an hour. Over the next 9 years, Donald
Donald and Bluebird K7 took the record another 5 times, raising it in 1964 to 276.3 miles an hour.
But the fiercely patriotic Donald wanted more, and in the winter of 1966 relaunched K7 on Lake Coniston in England, saying,
"I'm determined to be the first man to do 300 miles an hour on water. I'm going to do it for Britain or die in the attempt. I'm bloody terrified, but I'm going to do it."
And so began a chain of disasters that would ultimately end in tragedy. On the 13th of December, Donald clocked 267 miles an hour, then hit a seagull, smashed the front cockpit, one of the sponsons, and damaged the engine. On the night of the 19th, a storm raged, and the roof of Bluebird's shed collapsed on her. Then finally, on the 3rd of January, whilst playing cards and the night before the final run, the superstitious Donald turned up the ace of spades, then the queen of spades, the so-called hand of death, and remarked,
"I know that one of the family is going to get the chop. I pray to God it isn't me. But if it is, I hope I'm going ruddy fast at the time."
January the 4th, 1967, dawned bright and fair. Donald's first run clocked the incredible speed of 297 miles an hour, just 3 short of the magic 300. Without waiting to refuel, Donald turned Bluebird K7 round and set off for the return leg. With just 100 meters to go, he was doing 320 miles an hour. With the finishing line in sight, the incredibly unstable K7 hit a tiny wave created by her first run. She took off, somersaulted, and with a deafening bang smashed into the lake. Donald was killed instantly. 3-point hydroplanes and jet engines are an incredibly lethal mix. Of all the record attempts in them since Donald's death 40 years ago, half have ended in tragedy. The last successful run being made as far back as 1978 by Australian Ken Warby in his home-built boat Spirit of Australia. His record of 317 miles an hour still stands. You can't go faster on water than in a 3-point hydroplane, but only on mirror flat water. Which is why, for massive speed at sea, Class 1 powerboat racing, the biggest, most expensive of the lot, now uses a completely different type of machine, the racing catamaran.
A machine capable of 160 miles an hour, not just on a flat lake, but out at sea, where conditions can be anything but smooth.
Class 1 is the pinnacle of modern powerboat racing, with 11 Grand Prix held every year in the world's most glamorous locations. But the races are held offshore, where there are waves, and the surface of the water is changing all the time.
So how are these catamarans able to go so fast in sea conditions that would spell disaster for a traditional hydroplane?
Because catamarans combine the speed technology of the 3-point hydroplanes like Bluebird with the stability of the early stepped hull racers like Jazz to get the best of both worlds.
Like hydroplanes, catamarans run on a tunnel of air, minimizing drag, maximizing speed. But either side of that tunnel is a stepped hull.
Fast, stable, and good at riding waves, these hulls act as stabilizers in rough weather. But for serious speed, these alone aren't enough. You still need massive power.
And the Class 1 catamarans have a ridiculous amount of that, thanks to this, a Lamborghini V12 8.2-litre engine.
Chucking out 900 horsepower. That's the same as a modern Grand Prix car. And this boat's got 2 of them. 1,800 horsepower fed to state-of-the-art propellers costing £10,000 a pair. That combination of massive engines, high-tech props, and catamaran hulls gives a stable, sea-going platform capable of speeds in excess of 160 miles an hour. But even these machines can flip. And rather terrifyingly, I'm going to be driving one. Or rather, I'm steering, because to drive one of these things takes a crew of 2. One person to steer and one person to control the throttles. In this case, Chris Parsonage, who owns and races this boat on the Grand Prix circuit.
Okay, we head out where that boat's going.
I'm now really, really nervous. And after my aborted run at the hydroplane school, I'm not at all sure I fancy this.
Okay, we're going. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Like riding on a road. It's just a little bit of swell, this is nothing. Don't worry about them, she won't go anywhere.
Controlling the throttles is where the real skill lies, as these boats don't have any brakes. So to slow down for bends or waves, you've got to anticipate them miles in advance and work the throttle accordingly. It's like trying to drive your car down a twisty lane without touching the brakes. Only here, as well as bends, there are waves that can send you airborne and flip you over.
Alright, just sit back, relax in the seat.
Slow down, Chris.
Okay, keep coming round, keep coming round, keep coming round, keep coming round. No, no.
Oh, sorry.
Alright, boat's okay, don't worry about the boat. That's alright, no, keep her going, she's alright.
Chris is constantly adjusting how high the 2 stepped hulls are riding out of the water, keeping our drag to a minimum.
Okay, we're running up to 80, 85, straighten her up a bit. We're alright, we're doing fine. Just trimming her up a bit. Round we go, just steady, steady. 95, 98, 100, 102. She's running lovely. Okay. That's it. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's exhilarating. I just chicken out.
This is massive speed on an ever-changing surface, achieved through maximum power, minimum drag, and maximum brown trousers.
Over 100 on water. Yes, a bit scared for some of the time, but I'm still here. I'm still here.